There are 9 types of people you're going to meet in your retirement. Some offer attributes you may want to adopt, while others, habits you might want to avoid. In any event, my grandmother once told me to listen because you can always learn something new. So today, I'm going to walk you through the 9 types of people you're going to encounter in retirement. Which one or ones will you be most like? Good morning. I am David Hollander, and this is Protect Your Assets. For those of you just joining us for the first time, welcome. People around here, you hear the jingle, they call me the Sandman, and that's because I help my listeners sleep well at night by answering their most troubled legal and financial questions each week, and that's because I run a tax, legal, and financial firm and have been doing it for over 30 years. So as I was saying, there are numerous surveys out there and studies that have been performed on how people approach and live in retirement. And when you jump out of that and you look at it closely, you can see that there are several different types of people that emerge through retirement, and you'll encounter these in your, quote, golden years. Some you may want to be like, others you might want to avoid. The key is they all can provide a lesson for living a fulfilling retirement. So today I'm going to share with you the 9 types of people that you'll encounter in retirement and what you can learn from them. Now, let's get started. Well, we had quite a week on the market. The Dow Jones overall finally hit 40,000. We love numbers, big round numbers. So 40,000 was achieved, closed on Friday. We did get to it during the week, but closed Friday at 40,004. And for the week, the Dow was up 1.2%. Year-to-date, Dow's about 6.1%. S&P 5303 up 1.5%. 11.2% for the year. And the NASDAQ had a strong week, up 2.1%. Year-to-date up 11.2%. So you've got the S&P, NASDAQ all over 11%. International index starting to come on now as well. It was up 6.5% year-to-date. For the week up 1.5%. So the week overall was good for markets. The 10-year Treasury starting to come down. We're starting to see yields come down. And that settled at 4.42% on the 10-year. Oil, almost $80 a barrel, 79.53, up year-to-date 11%, and bonds are off about 1%. So we saw this past week the consumer index come out, the CPI report. And overall, inflation is moderating, going the other way. And that's why stocks have rallied. And again, the market's anticipating that at some point, the Fed will lower rates. So we'll just stay tuned and see what happens there. Now, let's get back to our subject for the day. We're talking about the 9 types of people you're going to meet in retirement. And this first one, I call this first one the superhero. Not all superheroes wear capes. In fact, most of the retired folks that I know, they wear T-shirts. And they're emblazoned with the word on it, volunteer. In fact, this past weekend, we got to participate at Habitat for Humanity in Oakland and build some playhouses for kids. And it was great. We really enjoyed it. We do that as a company for the community. And so we built a couple houses. And if you look at our social media, you can see on there what we did. But, you know, there were a lot of folks there at Habitat for Humanity that were wearing these T-shirts that said superhero. And these were retired folks who, you know, we're good at building a roof or putting a wall together or, you know, painting, drawing animals. Anyway, 2/3 of retirees say they found retirement to be the best time in life to give back. And according to an Age Wave study, the study strongly shows volunteering can be positive on your overall well-being in retirement. Retirees were 3 times more likely to say helping people in need brings them happiness in retirement than spending money on themselves or other people. Further, those who donate money or volunteer feel a stronger sense of purpose and self-esteem and are happier and healthier overall. So the moral of that story, well, everyone should consider volunteering as a top retirement goal. Are you lost? Well, not everyone has a smooth transition into retirement. If you know what I'm talking about, stick with me as I come back and we'll talk about the next person you're going to meet in retirement. You're listening to the Protect Your Assets show with David Hollander, the Sandman. That's me. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I am David Hollander, also known around here as the Sandman, and you're listening to Protect Your Assets. People around here, they call me the Sandman. That's because I help my listeners sleep well at night by answering their most troubled tax, legal, and financial questions each week. And that's because I've been running a tax, legal, and financial firm for over 30 years. Everyone's experience in retirement is unique. But there are 9 types of people that you're going to meet in retirement. This last segment, we were talking about the first. I call him the superhero. The second type of person, as I was mentioning on the way out, was the person who is lost. That is, not everyone has a smooth transition into retirement. As noted in an article, you might want to read this. This was published by the American Psychological Association. Try saying that in the morning right when you wake up. Research has found some people experience anxiety, depression, even debilitating feelings of loss after they retire. So what's the lesson to take away from this? Too often people can put too much focus on money when planning for retirement. It's very important to also plan for the social and psychological shift, such as coping with the loss of your career identity, forming new relationships, and finding things to do to pass the time. That's one reason why it's super important before you enter retirement or get close to it that you do a written financial plan that changes as the market changes, as taxes change, as Social Security, all these things. It's available now, these virtual return plans that are online that you can get access to. And so it's important that you do that. However, you won't know exactly how this new life stage feels until you get there. So one way to avoid any emotional surprises in retirement is to give retirement a test drive by gradually reducing your work hours if possible as you near your retirement date, and try out those things you might want to do in retirement. All right, so the next type of person that we meet in retirement is what I call the generous person. Are you a generous person? Well, some parents and grandparents just can't help themselves. They'll help a child or a grandchild even under the constraints of a limited income. I see this quite a bit. There's nothing wrong with helping out your child or your grandchild. In fact, it becomes a problem, though, for some. I've seen this when children start to become a financial burden on their own retirement goals for their parents or their grandparent. And this becomes very common, and particularly now. Get this, nearly 40% of empty nesters are still supporting their adult children financially in some way, according to a report by 55 Places. The average monthly amount these parents spend on each child is $254. What's a lesson you can learn about this? Well, remember, your savings are earmarked for a specific purpose to help support yourself for the next 20 or 30 years in retirement. People are living a lot longer, and it's true that adult children today face all kinds of financial challenges, high interest rates, extremely hard to buy an affordable property these days. And you may say, well, back in the old days, can't believe I'm saying that, we didn't face that. It wasn't as challenging. But then I always say, well, don't you remember the 80s? I sure do. Remember what interest rates were back then? 12, 13, 14%. I mean, think about that. We had interest rates that were 14% to get a mortgage. And sure, the properties seemed like they were a lot cheaper, but were they really? So anyways, I mean, these are all lessons and things that you can share with your family and your children. And I've found that a lot of children today just don't know how to get into real estate, don't know how to buy their first property. And that's because they haven't been shown how to do it. So are you one of those people? Maybe you haven't really asked the question. We had a family come in this week. He had a retirement account, and he's still working. He's in his early 70s, and we talked about his RMD that was coming up. He was going to have to start taking distributions out of that. He didn't really need it, and he had a decent-sized retirement account there. And he told me during the conversation, he said, I really want to help my niece and her 3 kids. They're back east. She's living paycheck to paycheck. I'm giving them monthly money. It was a little more than the $235 a month I just mentioned. But I would really like to help them. And so should I name them as my beneficiary on my trust? I said, well, sure, you could do that. And so, how long do you think you're going to live? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, when do you think you're going to die? And he said, I don't know that. And I said, you don't? He said, well, I have a guess. My dad lived to be around 92, 93. I think I'll go 94, 95 or so. I said, okay, well, let's say you make it to 95. He said, okay, let's say I do. It's 23 years from now. So do you want to wait 23 years to see that family actually enjoy all that hard money that you work for? He said, no. And I said, so what's preventing you from starting to take money out of that IRA right now and use it to buy another property? He said, well, won't I have to pay tax on all that? And I said, no, you don't. What do you mean? Well, you can actually set up an IRA that owns real estate. And then that real estate can become a rental property. And then, you follow me? Now you use that money to buy a piece of property, help somebody out, have them pay a mortgage, maybe pay you. There's all sorts of ways to do this. You can tell I get creative. I am an attorney, so I can talk to you about these kind of things. We do taxes here too. Anyway, this is what we're talking about now. So then what was the barrier? He said, well, my wife's not so into this. Okay, well, thanks for telling me that piece now. Where is she? Why isn't she sitting at this table? He said, that's a good question. I'm going to make sure she does come down and we talk about this because it's important to him. He would really like to see his niece, who for the last 10 years hasn't been really able to get ahead. She's continually digging a hole, it seems like, and she doesn't know how to build wealth for herself. And how about these 3 kids that are growing up now? What are they learning? What kind of lesson are they taking away from it? The same. Not a good one, right? So you as the individual have the power to actually change those 4 people's lives. Now, why aren't you doing that? Good question. Okay. All right. So retirement lesson learned. Your savings, remember, should last your lifetime. But if you have excess and you don't know how to access it, you don't know how to help other people or your family, and you want to learn, there's ways to do it. You don't have to completely cut people off. You just need to set limits. You need to figure out what else is possible, and you need to take action. So one way to make sure you're doing the right thing with your money is to make sure that it's on the right track. What am I talking about? Well, just like I mentioned, our friend who came in this past week, he didn't know if his retirement plan was on the right track because his advisor didn't know anything about what I'm talking about. You can't get a second opinion from the guy who gave you the first one, even if that's you. On today's show, we are sharing the 9 people you're going to meet in retirement. Coming up here on Protect Your Assets will be our popular They Say segment. Do you have a friend who's super cheap? Or are you that friend? Well, you're going to meet this type of retiree during our next segment. So much more coming your way. You're listening to the Protect Your Assets show. We'll be right back. I am David Hollander. Welcome back. I am David Hollander, also known as the Sandman, and you are listening to Protect Your Assets this morning. Why do people call me the Sandman? Well, that's because I help my listeners sleep well at night by answering their most tax, legal, or financial questions each week. This morning, we are talking about the 9 people you're going to meet in retirement. And so we were talking about the person who's lost. We were talking about the superhero, the volunteer. Are you one of those people? Well, this morning we're covering all the 9 types of people that you could meet in retirement, and maybe you'll be one of those. Now it's time for one of our fan favorite parts of the show, our They Say segment, where we debunk common myths, half-truths, and sometimes just bad advice that they say. All right, so here's one they say. They say there are people who don't enjoy their money in retirement. And is this because they don't have enough saved or because they don't give themselves permission to spend? Well, although retirement is often portrayed as the time to live life to the fullest, the attitude of many is quite different. After saving all their lives, they are reluctant to spend money even on their retirement goals. There was a study published in the Journal of Personal Finance, which said that half of retired folks said they were afraid to use their savings. Think about that. Half of the folks surveyed in retirement were afraid to use their savings. What was the reason? The number one reason given? Well, running out of money in retirement. Second reason, the need for medical care. What if something happens and I can't pay for that? Because let's face it, healthcare costs have risen way more than inflation. You been to the doctor lately or gone to the hospital? How much of that bill is covered by Medicare? And then, of course, there are concerns about the high stock market right now. And when's it going to fall down and how much will it go down? So some of the lessons that are learned, these fears highlight the importance of having a retirement plan that you are confident in. That way you know the amount you can spend to live a comfortable retirement guilt-free. It's perfectly okay to have concerns about spending, but it should not inhibit your ability to enjoy everything that you've worked so hard to achieve, and it often does because you don't really understand how much you can spend. Let's talk about that example. So I see this frequently. People come in, they've saved money in their 401k, they have their Social Security, maybe they have some other money that's sitting in a bank, etc., but they don't really understand how to convert that into income, because they've been growing it for so long. That's a different step. It's a different skill. I will equate this to playing your favorite game. I don't know what sort of sports you're into, but you know the ones who are gifted, who just do it naturally really well. Some of them are born with that. You know that. Then there's some that work really hard at it. And we're talking almost crazy, right? They just put so many hours into it, and they can become really good too. So that's what I'm talking about. If you have the right coach or you have someone who's seen thousands and thousands of cases like we have, you tend to start learning things about if you do this, you can expect that. And that's part of it. So just because you have a financial plan, just because it's spitting out some information to you, do you know how to interpret that information? And I think what's really unique about our firm is that we have a CPA, we have an attorney, we have a certified financial planner. They sit around a table and they work with you to make sure that you're taking full advantage of the tax code, that when you pass away, you're not giving more to the government than you should. But also going to this point, that you're able to spend a certain amount of money. And I'll give you an example. There's a client who comes to mind right now who had sold his business and he wanted to spend a certain amount. In fact, when we first met, he said to me right out the bat, look, I'm meeting 3 other guys and when I come back, I want you to show me how I could spend this kind of money each and every year and how that's going to last the rest of my life. And I said, well, how long are you going to live? You see the comment thread? He said, 98. I said, okay, let's go to 98. So we put that down in our plan. It's called eMoney. You can go look it up online. We use eMoney. And we mapped out all the way through age 98 When he came back, we started to go through this plan. We actually look at it. We say, where is your income coming from? And at the time, he was 64. And he was all ready to go take Social Security because, let's face it, he was worried at not being there. So the first thing I did was pulled out his Social Security statement, which he didn't even know how to get from the Social Security Administration. And we sat down, we looked at it together, and I explained to him some things that were going on in there. And then he decided, okay, well, I'm going to definitely wait till my full retirement age. And I may go to 70. And here's why. Because he has other types of income that he can turn on. He has a 401k sitting there. And that 401k is laden with tons of tax. Because when you start to take that money out, it is all ordinary income. But you know what? You have the power of when you turn that on and when you turn it off and how much you take or how much you leave. And so when you start to map that out or simulate that, you can control how much in taxes you pay. Think about that. Is it the other way right now? Are you just collecting income and paying taxes without really studying it and thinking about it? You probably are, because that's very common. So don't do that. So once you figure that out, you actually may start putting more money back in your pocket because you're paying less in taxes. And what does that do? It lets you spend more. Because now you can see how much you can spend. That's why you've been saving. You just don't know how to turn it into income and turn it into a way where you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. But if you can map it out, and look in each and every year, and you can see how things will change and how you can adjust and pivot, and you monitor it, because we do like to meet with our clients regularly to go over these kind of things, and we're available to answer your phone call when you call. When you have that question, in the middle of the night, you wake up at 3 a.m, you can't go back to sleep because you're thinking about, where am I going to get that? Well, you just pick up the phone and call us. We can figure that out. So that's the person that I've found who doesn't spend in retirement and may be somewhat frugal because they just don't know any better. And so you can fix that by getting some help and figuring out what you can spend. The next person you're going to meet in retirement is the tireless mover. This person is always on the go with a bucket list that is seemingly as long as a CVS receipt. You can catch up with this person in between a Bikram yoga class, a 20-mile bike ride. Every day is filled with classes or appointments or friendly meetups. On the weekends, this person is trying to skydive for the first time, or they're going to go to EDC tonight in Vegas. Retirement lesson learned. To remain active as you grow older, you need to live a healthy lifestyle. Studies have proved that exercise and a healthy diet increase energy levels, boost your immune system. The CDC recommends about 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity a week. I like to spread mine out, frankly. Older adults who regularly exercise have greater stamina, mobility, and they push out that aging process. Not to be overlooked is the fact that a healthy lifestyle will result in lower medical costs and less in the way of spending on that. The next person you're going to meet in retirement is the workhorse. A working retirement. Isn't that an oxymoron? For many retirees, it's not. And they're not working just for financial reasons. A flex job survey of over 2,000 professionals at or near retirement found that while 64% need to work, they also say they want to work. Why? They enjoy it. Another 17% work solely because they want to, not because they need the money. What's the lesson here? Many people see retirement not as a time to rest and relax, but to realize their dreams of becoming an entrepreneur. Older Americans are starting more businesses than ever before. People 55 to 64 years old made up 26% of new entrepreneurs, according to the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. Certainly not for everyone. Work can provide meaning, sense of purpose. In addition to the financial advantages, it may also offer physical and mental health benefits. Another study published by the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology found people who retired with jobs in their previous fields reported better physical and mental health than those who fully retired. So if you choose to work in retirement, just keep in mind the financial implications. Your earnings can impact things like Social Security and the taxes that you're going to pay. So let's think about this. If your 401k right now is at all-time highs, because as I mentioned, the Dow Jones just hit 40,000 on Friday. It closed there. S&P 500 is up at all-time highs right now. Should you be sitting there and not doing anything about that? No. Particularly if you're in retirement or about to retire, you need to get a second opinion now. There are things you can do to protect that. So when that eventual downturn comes, you can shore up that money so then it'll be available for you to use and live off of when you need it. Don't stick your head in the sand on this one. It's time for a quick break. But when we come back, you want to be a globetrotter? The answers are coming up next. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I am David Hollander, also known around here as the Sandman. And people call me that around here because I help people sleep well at night by answering their most troubled tax, legal, or financial questions each week. And that's because I've been running a tax, legal, and financial firm for over 30 years. And this morning we've been talking about the 9 types of people that you're going to meet in retirement. And you probably will become one of these types of people. So just to review who they were, the first type of person, they're lost, transitioning into retirement. They don't know what to focus on or what to do. The next type is the superhero, and these are folks who volunteer. Next, we got the overly generous person. I find that the person who takes care of their kids, usually still living with them, paying bills, and they can't really afford to do that or don't know how to stop that or change that train is a problem, can become a problem. The next is the one who doesn't enjoy their money, who sits on it because they don't know how to change it and make it more affordable or make it more interesting to spend because they're not going to run out. Then you got the tireless mover, the person who's always running around trying to do something, whether it's a Bikram yoga class or a 20-mile bike ride. Then you have the workhorse, the person who just won't give it up. Some folks, as you know, pass away at their desk. And they just can't stop. So there's the folks who aren't really enjoying retirement because they just can't do it. And so before the break, I was talking about the 9th or the last person you're going to meet. And this is the person who is the globetrotter, I'll call it. And this is the type of person who just loves to travel. In fact, I've been getting texts all week from my friend who, we'll call him Bruce. He's over in Spain right now. And he's been sending me shots nightly. In fact, it's morning here when I wake up and I see these pictures. And good for you, Bruce. he's living the life he always wanted to live. And I saw some great pictures from Ibiza the other day that were making me want to go there. I haven't been there yet. But anyway, maybe you should go. Maybe you should travel. And maybe you should become a globetrotter in your retirement. And so if you're one of these types of people or you're trying to figure out how to become that type of person, this is what we do here. Each and every day, we help you figure that out and figure out how to make that happen for you. And so if you missed any of today's show and you want to go back and listen to see what we were talking about and how you might solve those problems, check out our podcast. We do a podcast from the show each and every week. We cut out the commercials, and you can catch up on what you missed. Go to the podcast at pyaradio.com. Or where you get your favorite podcasts, say Spotify or iTunes. Just type in Protect Your Assets, and you can look for the show on the 9 types of people you're going to meet in retirement. So interactions with people who travel in the form of either postcards sent from abroad or envious selfies in front of famous landmarks like my friend Bruce. The lesson you can learn from this is that survey after survey ranks travel as one of the top retirement activities that most people do. Of the more than 2,000 retirees, the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies said 39% said they spend their time traveling, the third most cited activity after spending time with their family and enjoying their hobbies. And so traveling could be what you want to do. You could learn a lot and learn a lot from other people. Now, inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. That's it. Picture a day when you don't have to worry about taxes, where your income's going to come from anymore, or who's in the White House. Picture a day when you can walk into the palace at Versailles, enjoy a glass of rosé on the Seine in the afternoon as the sun's going down. Picture a day when you can relax, travel, spend more time with your family, and maybe do some of those things you always wanted to do, but you're not doing. Those days are out there. I'd like to give a big thanks to the Protect Your Assets team for putting together a great show today. We got Kevin Renfer, who does so much work back there. Thank you very much. Lee, today, thanks so much for being here and helping out. And, of course, Adrian and Phil, who are back there answering all the phones. Appreciate you guys. Because without my team, I'd just be another pretty voice on the radio. Go out and make the rest of your life the best of your life.